Have you ever had moments where you randomly think back to your childhood and remember when you experienced that one terrifying scene that should have had no place being in a video game? Like the ski-free Yeti, or the man-eating humanoids in that one bunker level of Uncharted. This year I asked you guys which moments in non-horror games ended up scaring the crap out of you as a kid. These are the results.
Welcome to Mentalctober.
Sonic drowning. In the 90s, Sonic was established as Sega's mascot with an attitude, as he stepped up to bat as the main competitor to Nintendo's Mario. But when you're playing these games, you feel fast, heroic, and despite a few bottomless pits or Eggman's badniks roaming around, you felt powerful. But Sonic has a weakness: water. And if Sonic is underwater too long, this stress-inducing jingle will begin playing. Not only that, but Sonic's speed is drastically reduced in water, and areas to replenish your oxygen are scarce. Not to mention the countdown that's on the screen, and when you do find these bubbles, it's perfectly timed to only give you a couple of chances at grabbing one. This is the perfect mixture of trauma to get the waterworks flowing as a child, especially once that countdown hits 0. Sonic CD sound test. While we're on the topic of Sonic, in Sonic CD for the Sega CD, there are a certain set of numbers you can enter into the sound test for the game that will unlock some extra content and goodies for the player to see. But set the numbers to FM number 46, PCM 12, DA 25, and you'll land here. A screen lined up with unsettling versions of Sonic with Japanese text that says "Fun is infinite, Sega Enterprises," image by Majin. Not to mention the creepy boss music playing in the background. Majin is a Japanese word that can be translated to magic person or demon, which has led many fans to name this creepy Sonic in the background Majin Sonic. Honorable mention goes to the Game Over music from the US version of the game. What were they thinking with this? Sonic Adventure, Amy's Levels. Sonic Adventure was Sonic's first real foray in the 3D realm, and Sonic Team had quite the ambitious project here, using this game as a medium to flex the power of the Sega Dreamcast console at the time. Sonic Adventure has 6 playable characters, with Amy Rose returning with her own unique storyline. The Amy levels are mainly comprised of her having to flee one of Eggman's robots, simply named Zero. This Rasta robot is invincible, and chases Amy through the entirety of each level, leading to some unnerving moments, like when he stalks her through the House of Mirrors at Twinkle Park. The music you're hearing right now is what plays through that section, and I'm sure this used to give you a couple of chills down your spine. Especially those baby noises in the background, that's the thing that always got me. Honorable mention for this game: trying to find your TV remote to turn your television down before the music on the title screen kicks in. Shout out to Rock Lengington Fazzy Balls for reminding me of that anxiety. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, The Informant Women. The Zelda series could have gotten its own video with the amount of Zelda moments you guys submitted, but we'll start with A Link to the Past. Hyrule is under control of one of the main antagonists of the game, Aghanim, which means the soldiers of Hyrule are brainwashed and under his control as well. With Link stepping up to save the day, this makes him a wanted man, so the Hyrule soldiers make quite the fuss when they charge at you in the wild. Now, in most fantasy games, you're encouraged to converse with all the villagers or townsfolk, as you never know what kind of quests or items they'll give you. Do this with Link when you visit Kakariko Village, and you'll run into the Informant Women, who won't waste any words with you, and immediately summon the guards, running into their houses and locking the doors behind them. The soldiers come rushing in, and this panicked music will play until Link decides to leave the area. Doesn't this sound a lot like the boss music from Super Mario Bros. 2? The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Like the whole game. I'll go ahead and skip the intros for this game as I have a whole 25-minute retrospective on this awaiting your viewership, but there's no one specific moment here because you all submitted several from this game, so let's quickly go through them. You spend the first few hours of Ocarina of Time playing as young Link, exploring Hyrule and getting to know the townsfolk in Castletown. Things are all chill and peaceful for the most part, unless you visit the royal family tomb and run into these things screaming in your face. This is but a small taste of the horrors of Ocarina of Time. At some point during the game, Link is sealed away by the Master Sword for 7 years, awakening as a teenager while Ganondorf is busy during this time wrecking Hyrule. The player gets to see adult Link in his new badass 3D form, and your mission is clear. Go find the sages and defeat Ganondorf once and for all. But then you step out the Temple of Time and realize that Hyrule is completely leveled. The cheerful and peaceful town you once knew is a pile of rubble, and these re-deads wander around where the friendly townspeople used to be. From this point on, the game doesn't hold back with unnerving moments. Bottom of the Well dungeon was what I saw in the comments the most. A dungeon that's filled with enemies that were probably meant to leave a lasting impression on kids. Skulltulas, blood stains on the walls, talking skeletons, Gibdos, they scream too. Flying skulls called bubbles, more re-deads, wall masters, these things still make me feel uncomfortable, and the man of the hour, Dead Hand. What was Nintendo thinking with this? A pool of decrepit gelatinous horror, with appendages that squirm through the ground to kill you. Can you imagine what this thing looks like if we could see through the ground? I don't even want to think about that. I'm actually kind of shocked that Dead Hand didn't return as an enemy in the depths and Tears of the Kingdom to traumatize a new generation. Honorable mention goes to the Moblins roaming around the Sacred Forest meadow when you return to the Kokiri Forest. Check out that face.
I've been waiting for you.
Pokemon X and Y. Elevator Ghost. The Pokemon series isn't a stranger to creepy moments, some intentional and others unintentional. But that factor has been in the series since the very beginning. There was something about the first two generations that had its fair share of eerie moments, like the ghost in Pokemon Tower or that one girl that says she can see a hand on your shoulder. But the one that still has fans rather perplexed to this day happens in Pokemon X and Y for the 3DS. In Luminos Town, if your character enters one of the buildings in town and rides the elevator to the second floor, a cutscene will trigger with a mysterious dark-haired girl that suddenly appears behind you. She floats by, stops, and simply says, "No, you're not the one." To this day, no one can fully explain why this was in the game. It could have been the developers intentionally messing with people, or a side plot that they never got to finish. Allow me to thicken the mystery. This may strictly be a coincidence, but an urban legend known as the Elevator game gained a ton of traction in Korea and Japan that same year. A legend popularized by the mysterious death of Eliza Lam in February 2013. The legend is essentially a list of rules that you have to follow and can be played in any elevator in any building that has at least 10 floors. The building in Pokemon has 2 floors, but bear with me here. During the game, the rules mention a woman who isn't human who may board the elevator at some point and start calling out to you or start asking you questions, but you have to make sure never to acknowledge her. Otherwise, you may be trapped in her world forever. Seeing X and Y released in October of that year, this could be a reference to that urban legend, or strictly a coincidence. But if it is in fact a direct reference, it's a good thing our main character here is mute. Otherwise, this little detour may have taken a much darker turn. Pokepark 2, The World for One and One Alone. The Pokepark games were a couple of adventure-based spin-off games for the Wii, with Pokepark 2 taking place in a dimension called Wish Park. Pikachu and his friend Piplup quickly realize that things in that dimension were not what they seem, and the Pokemon within it are trapped. It's a dimension made to entrance all the Pokemon within it. So Pikachu and Piplup go on an adventure to snap all the affected Pokemon out of this trance, and toward the end of the game they find out that the mythical Pokemon of Darkness, Darkrai, is behind this plot, and in response, Darkrai erases the memories of all of Pikachu's friends and sends him into a world where he's destined to be alone. We see him emerge in this dark world, running around looking for all of his friends, and after a while, he almost gives up. This moment is pretty short-lived as Piplup shows up to retrieve his friend, and light returns to the world. But just thinking about Pikachu in this dark world, all by himself, for all eternity, must have put the feeling of dread in the stomach of some young players. Super Mario 64, the piano. You know the one. Yeah, this is a pretty obvious one, but I'm trying to get to every single comment, so some of these may not be a surprise to you at all. The haunted house area of Super Mario 64, I'm sure, struck fear in the hearts of many of your childhood selves. This would be the introduction of 3D gaming to many children at that time. Mario heads into this haunted house with all of these mischievous boos trying to break his spirit, until you reach a room with a pretty normal looking piano. I'm sure everyone thought, oh cool, this is the Nintendo 64, maybe I can play this piano. And then, yeah, the piano plays you. This was the most liked comment on my post, so as popular as this one is, I couldn't ignore it. The piano wasn't the only thing in this game that messed with players though, like Bowser's laugh or the endless stairs in Peach's castle. I can hear the music in my head as I speak. And how can I forget the unnecessarily giant eel in Jolly Roger Bay? Speaking of Super Mario, Super Paper Mario, River Twigs. Super Paper Mario was the third game in the Paper Mario series, released for the Wii in 2007. Mario embarks on another journey after the game's antagonist Count Bleck summons the Chaos Heart, which allows him to open the Void, which throughout the game puts the world in danger of being swallowed up into nothingness. One location Mario visits is called the Underwear, and I never got the underwear joke when I first played this. Anyway, this serves as the game's underworld, and within it is a river of souls known as the River Twigs, a reference to the river Styx from Greek mythology. Now, there is a ferry you can use to safely cross this river, but if you have, and these underhands will lock onto you, trying to take your soul down with them. They're invincible, by the way.
Course they are.
Honorable mention goes to Mimi, who is one of the major antagonists in the game, and she may look like a cute little monster girl until she decides to fight you and transforms into her true form.
Why?
Conker's Bad Fur Day, the ending. First off, if you were playing this game as a kid, you probably shouldn't have been. But Conker here has a rough night of drinking at the pub, and what was supposed to be a night of Conker heading over to his girlfriend Barry's place for the night, he drunkenly falls asleep on a farm instead, and wakes up with this massive hangover. This mistake leads him into a series of wacky adventures throughout the course of the game. And spoilers, Barry ends up getting shot and killed toward the end of the game by one of the villains, Panther King. Without any context here, because this game is difficult to sum up in a few seconds, a xenomorph-like creature bursts from the chest of Panther King, which is the final boss of the game. The game breaks the fourth wall at the end, with Conker asking the programmers themselves for help. They give him a katana and, with time stopped, teleport him back in front of the xenomorph thing to properly decapitate it and win the glory. With his victory, Conker is declared king, but realizes a little too late that he should have asked the programmers to bring Barry back to life. The game ends on this monologue.
And yep, I may be king. I have all the money in the world. And all the land. And all that stuff. But you know, I don't really think I want it. I just want to go home. With Barry. And, I don't know, have a bottle of beer. It's not gonna happen. It's true what they say. The grass is always greener. And you don't really know what it is you have until it's gone. Gone. Gone.
Yoshi's Story, big blurb. Okay, how could this happy game scare children? Look how cute this fish is. Oh. Honorable mention goes to eating or touching fuzzies in Yoshi's Island.
That was too high.
Pikmin, Wraiths. Pikmin may look innocent, but the setup of this series makes it a perfect nesting ground for scary and nerve-wracking encounters. The first two games in the series star Captain Olimar, a humanoid from the planet Hocotate, who crash lands on a mysterious planet that seems to be modeled after an Earth with no humans. Or extinct humans, I should say, because there is human belongings lying around everywhere. So to help him recover his ship parts to repair his damaged ship, Olimar enlists the help of these strange plant-animal hybrids he names Pikmin. I'm introducing you to these cute little things just so you can see how awful it feels when they die. The creatures on this planet are ruthless and have all kinds of barbaric ways of eating or killing these things. You can hear the death cry of the Pikmin as their souls ascend into the heavens. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I lost more than 5, I wanted to restart the game altogether. And if you forget to summon them all back to your ship before sundown, they get massacred by the nighttime creatures that come out to prey on them. In Pikmin 2, we're introduced to an enemy known as the Water Wraith, and it uses these two steamroller-shaped boulders to flatten your Pikmin. The only way to get the upper hand here is to toss the giant purple Pikmin at it, which will make it vulnerable and susceptible to attacks. Look how he tries to cut the moment he feels that pain. Yeah, you better run. Nintendo took this enemy a step further, with the final boss of Pikmin 3 being the Plasm Wraith. This thing looks like they modeled it from raw chicken, by the way. But don't let its looks fool you. This enemy is formidable, but also one of the best bosses in the series. Sonic Adventure 2, Egg Quarters. Sonic Adventure 2 is one of the most memorable games in the series, introducing a playable villain team for the very first time in Sonic history. This game introduces us to two new characters, Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic's rival, and Rouge the Bat, a thief/government spy that serves as the foil to Knuckles. Her second playable level in this story is Egg Quarters, where she infiltrates Eggman's desert base to get to the bottom of his plans. This level requires her to find 3 keys to unlock the door to the main part of the base, but as you hunt around, there are these beetle-shaped sentries that patrol the level, and if it manages to spot you, the alarm starts blaring and it starts blasting. I was an older kid at this time, so while it didn't necessarily scare me, this mechanic has a way of making you panic for a moment when you get caught. But let's not forget the horrors of the hero side. I'm not talking about the crazy gadget level. I mean King Boom Boo. This is one of the major bosses for Knuckles, a giant ghost that seems to haunt the pyramid that Eggman has repurposed as his base. We see a ton of ghosts throughout multiple levels in Sonic Adventure 2, but the sound effects King Boom Boo made here are quite memorable. If you're wondering what Boom Boo is up to these days, we last saw him in Team Sonic Racing on the map called Boo's House. He's more or less a set piece and got a minor redesign, but hopefully Sonic Team leans back into the haunted theme for levels in future games. Hudson's Adventure Island. Bosses. There's something about old school games with bosses that were like 2 or 3 times the size of the player characters that really made them intimidating. I submit Gargamel from the Smurfs Game Boy game to the docket. But this year isn't about my suggestions. Hudson's Adventure Island for the NES, a title from Hudson Soft that is mostly a run-of-the-mill platformer, and regarded as one of the most difficult NES games out there. After completing a few platforming levels, you run into these bosses. A big muscular guy wearing an animal mask. Okay, it may not look so creepy now, but I could see how seeing this Cyclops mask could put a child on edge. I used to hate when bosses cornered me like this though. Yo, back up. Funny enough, all the bosses in this game are pretty much the same sprite with a different mask. Speaking of masks, Kid Chameleon, the Wall of Drills. Sometimes it's not necessarily horror aspects in games that are scary, but just the anticipation of things killing you in the worst way. This is Kid Chameleon, a game for the Sega Genesis where you play as Casey, the coolest guy in school, no doubt. Anyway, he collects masks in the game and can take on numerous forms with different powers that help him to traverse each level. Some of these levels have a massive wall of drills and gears that are closing in on you from behind. So that means Casey has to get through this level as fast as possible, or he'll be drilled and ground into paste. The game doesn't show that, but I'm pretty sure that's what we were thinking as kids. And it doesn't help that the obnoxious Sega Genesis twang is at its peak in the background. Almost sounds like the drills themselves, just ready to mutilate Casey here. Kirby Superstar, the Marx Glitch. In Kirby Superstar for the Super Nintendo, Kirby goes on a series of adventures, each with unique plot lines, and different gameplay mechanics that keeps things pretty fresh. You have the option to play co-op with a friend, with Kirby having the ability to spawn a helper to join him on the adventure. But if Kirby and the helper are using the hammer and or the parasol abilities, there's a very slim chance that the game will glitch, teleporting them directly to the final battle with Marx. The background will be completely glitched as if Marx himself phased through the environment of code to come kill you early. If you beat Marx in this showdown, it counts as beating that section of the game, even if you haven't unlocked it yet. Cool, right? I can say that now, but I can't imagine, before the days of the internet and forums, the poor kids who accidentally triggered this glitch. Leave me a comment below if this was you, and let me know if you're okay. Rocket, Robot on Wheels, Clowns. Rocket, Robot on Wheels was an N64 game created by Sucker Punch Productions, the first game for the studio before they moved on to Sly Cooper, Infamous, and their latest title, Ghost of Tsushima. I don't hear about this game a lot, but it's on my list and someone submitted a comment telling me about the clowns in the very first hub world. So I looked this up and I totally get it. This clown here is just napping until Rocket gets closer, and then suddenly it just wakes up and starts following him around. And he's like towering over him too. I'll defer to Dr. Mad Cow for his genuine reaction.
Oh my god. This is horrifying.
Super Mario 3D Land, Cosmic Mario. No explanation needed. It's interesting that Nintendo has been using the Clone Mario thing ever since Sunshine when Bowser Jr. tried it, and then it just evolved into a weird celestial being in Super Mario Galaxy, and then in Super Mario 3D Land they made it even more antagonizing, running at the screen with his big yellow eyes. This game came out way after my childhood years, but I'm putting it on the list because some of these races were horrifyingly difficult in themselves. Mario Party 8, Mario in the intro. I don't want to embarrass myself, but when I was little, I was scared of Mario in the intro of Mario Party 8. It spooked me a lot because during the Wii era, he was shown as angry or upset, and I hated that. Matthew, I had to read your comment to give this one context, but in exchange, I'll give you a moment I'm embarrassed to say scared me growing up. Like, why would they put this here? Metroid Dread, Emmys. Now this is a pretty recent one, but I wouldn't even say you have to be a child for this to scare you. In Samus's latest adventure, she heads out to the planet ZDR to investigate why the Galactic Federation lost contact with their state-of-the-art Emmy robots, short for Extraplanetary Multiform Mobile Identifiers. Samus won't have to search very long for the Emmys until they start searching for her instead. Reprogrammed by the antagonists of the game, the Emmys start hunting down Samus, and without the proper equipment to take them down, the player will be spending a lot of moments in this game trying to avoid them, each more cunning than the last. These sequences are heavily based on the SA-X from Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance, an X-parasite that's mimicking Samus and stalks her throughout the game. While the design of this cold, soulless Samus is a lot creepier than these Boston Dynamics looking robots, I do think the way that the Emmys track you down is a lot more nerve-wracking and deserves the spot on this list. Now if we had to see a whole nother story, but the Metroid series has always had a very quiet, claustrophobic, and creepy atmosphere to it since the very beginning. Samus is alone on these planets and isolated while she explores these regions. The item room song is pretty iconic, but someone mentioned in a comment how it creeped them out in the original NES game, almost like you shouldn't trust the item you're about to pick up. I know this is a different game, but this definitely got me the first time. Donkey Kong Country 2, the whole game, like its entire aesthetic. Donkey Kong Country 2 has a much darker feel to it than the first title. The music, the overall lighting of the game, DK being kidnapped as the main plotline. While this is considered the best Donkey Kong Country of the original trilogy, Rare leaned into the piratey Dead Men Tell No Tales type of vibe, and it shows all throughout. Haunted Hall is probably a good example of this, with Kremling wraiths chasing after you. I guess that we've learned today that anything that chases you in a game is pretty damn terrifying. Shout out to Awkward Silence pointing out the hostility of the Kongs themselves within the game. Why would your family charge you to save? I'll admit, older games having a save mechanic that the player had to pay for was foul. I'm looking at you, Resident Evil. Also, Awkward Silence, I'm a lore master, so I have to set you straight. Diddy and Dixie are more like family friends than actual family. Cranky and Wrinkly are only related to Donkey Kong, so unfortunately, these two don't qualify for the family discount. Or maybe they do since the first save is free. Donkey Kong 64. Get Out. Donkey Kong 64 would be the 3D follow-up to the Donkey Kong Country series, and as you explore this vast three-dimensional world, there are some indoor locations that will trigger this moment.
Get out!
A deep voice will yell "Get out" in your ears, and a crosshair will appear on screen, timing the player to leave the location before they pump your guts full of lead. The voice belongs to an unseen enemy known as Croc, and Croc actually first appeared in Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. The level Crackshot Croc is his only appearance, where there's a similar mechanic of a cursor pointing toward the characters, preparing to snipe. Unfortunately, there were no voices implemented for Croc during his debut, but the Game Boy Advance version fixes this, inserting his evil laugh right before each shot. Maybe one day, Croc will come out from behind the camera and show himself.
Get out!
I hope you all enjoyed this ass-gripping trip down memory lane.
I still have a lot of comments to get through, so if yours wasn't a part of this video, look out for part 2 of this little experiment that I'm doing for Mentalktober. And for the rest of you, go ahead and leave your childhood scares in the comments below. And until next time, be safe. The Prophet
A spookin'.